Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this panel discussion on our immigrant community and how to be an ally. My name is Jerry Wilson. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the League of Women Voters of Larimer County. My wife Kathy and I are co-chairs of the Civil Liberties and Rights team that is hosting this presentation. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose any political party or any candidate for public office, but that does not mean we are not political. We believe in informed and active participation in government and in influencing public policy through education and advocacy. The League's position on immigration supports policies to promote the reunification of immediate families, to be responsive to those facing political persecution or humanitarian crises, and to ensure fair treatment under the law for all people. In the transition to a reformed immigration system, the League supports provisions for individuals living in the country without legal permission to earn legal status. Kathy is now going to say a few words about Zoom protocol.
Well, welcome everybody. We're very excited that you're here tonight to listen to this discussion that we are presenting. I'm the Zoom host for tonight, so I have a few directions for this meeting. With the very large number of attendees that we will have, and just so you know, we had 308 people registered for us right before the meeting. We are asking that you keep yourself muted throughout the presentation. If you are new to Zoom, you should have a crosshatch over the microphone in your Zoom toolbar. Just wiggle your cursor and the toolbar will appear. You'll also find the chat button in your Zoom toolbar. Please place your questions in the chat, and you can do this as we go. We have some of our planning team who are monitoring the chat. No doubt we will have more questions than we will have time for, but we will do our best. We will address questions after the panel has presented. After the presentation, we're going to have a Larimer League announcements, and you're all welcome to stay for those announcements. It's not going to be a large portion of the meeting at all. So, shall we get started?
Turning it over to me?
I am turning it over to you. It's all yours.
We have 5 amazing panelists tonight, all leaders within Larimer County. We're starting with Jesús Castro. Jesús is a dreamer from Mexico and has been living in Fort Collins since 2008. He worked as a program coordinator for Fuerza Latina and is currently the director of El Delante Program and Workforce Initiatives of Isaac of Northern Colorado. He's also a theater major. Jesús is the 2023 Soul of Leadership Award recipient from the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. Thank you, Jesús. I'm turning it over to you.
Of course, yeah. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Jesús Castro. My pronouns are he, him. And this is very overwhelming because there's so many people. But it's also very lovely to see the interest of our community about the issues that we're talking about. And it makes me really happy to be here. Also, I'm a little anxious to share, but like Cindy was saying, I'm a dreamer, but I'm a DACA recipient. I get to renew my permit every 2 years. I just renewed a few months ago, and for the next one, we don't know what's going to happen with the political climate, but that's a whole different story. And I just wanted to talk to you a bit about the work that we do in Isaac, about how to be an ally, and how to, what's going on. So I wanted to start just saying, one of the things what I've been noticing with the media and these conversations that we're having about immigration, when we talk about the immigrant community, we tend to put everyone in a box. This narrative of saying like immigrants are this, immigrants are that, and by doing that, we are dehumanizing um, people. We are seen as if everyone it's the same when our stories and our feelings and uh, are valid. So I want you to keep that in mind. When we talk about immigration, I always say this is a humanitarian issue. There's a crisis. Um, and I really, really would like to keep that in mind that I am my own person. I am a DACA recipient, but also so many people have different stories. I think someone, I can see someone's screen on Google.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Who got into the screen here?
don't see a name.
It says Francis's screen.
Francis, can you close your screen, please? Or you will be removed from the meeting.
You'll just want to do stop share.
Oh, no, I did not do that right. Sorry.
Okay, sweet, awesome. But what I wanted to say with that is like when we think about immigration at this big issue, there's so many layers to it because all of us that are going through this, we have a different story, a different reason why we are here or how we came here, and keep that in mind because it's very very complex. We tend to simplify it and put everyone in a box, and that's not the case. So I just wanted to like to keep that in mind and what things that I'm about to share, just come with an open mind and an open heart because I think we have more in common than we don't. Uh, so yeah, I wanted to start with that, but I want to start talking about my work with Isaac first. I've been with Isaac since 2019, and I have the opportunity to work with different organizations of faith, and also with the immigrant community. We offer some resources. We also offer some programs, empowerment. I believe that um, empowerment, the empowerment of our community is very important, and we have some programs about leadership skills, how to be a business owner, how to get your permits for how to get like your permits if you want to open a restaurant. So we help people in many different ways, and also we I get the chance to work a lot with youth. We have an Adelante fellowship program during the summer. During this during the summers, I get the chance to work with youth from different communities, and we partner up with different organizations over northern Colorado, such as the library and the museum, the city of Fort Collins, and these youth are learning about what it means to be how to work in a nonprofit, start doing their network, getting to know other people from their community, and we also build leadership skills. For me, that's a really important thing because when I was their age, I didn't have any resources. I grew up in Arizona before moving to Colorado, and it was really hard for me to find programs that for people like me. I wanted to learn about so many things, but there was always that barrier of whether if I was able to qualify for a program or not. Uh, that program has been very, very important to me because I had the chance to meet incredible students or incredible young people that are now at CSU, and they have graduated from CSU, and they are part of this community. They are contributing so much to this community, and they're just like they love Fort Collins just as much as we all do, and they are Fort Collins is theirs as much as it's ours. So I get that privilege to work from youth from indigenous communities, from Muslim communities, Polish communities, Latino communities, and it's one of those programs where I get to see all of these people from different communities, from different parts of the world, just coming together and just being people and connecting, and it's very beautiful. And that's one component of my work. Another work, especially right now in 2025, that we're working on in Isaac, we are trying to support our community about what are their rights, if they get detained by immigration. So we are doing, in collaboration with Kim and Poder, we have done like a Know Your Rights training where we talk about what are your rights if you get detained by immigration? What do you need to do? Um, and I wish we had more time to talk about going too deep into that, but we only have 10 minutes. Within that work, we also have collaborated with Fuerza Latina, and Fuerza Latina created a packet of Know Your Rights. This packet was created back in 2017 during the first administration, and obviously it had to be updated. Kim helped us to do that, and this packet includes very important information about your rights, and also very like some triggering information or forms that in case you get detained and your kids are in school, like who's gonna take care of your kids, or if you need to pay for a bond and you need to sell your car or someone needs to access your debit cards, then you know, like who has the power to do that if you are arrested, if you're not able to do it yourself. So it includes all of this, you know, like really information. It's like all this information that it's very triggering for the community. So when we talk to them about it, or people are filling out these packets, because we're hosting little events for them to come and for them to do that, we have a mental health expert or a therapist in the house for them to be able to talk to that person in case something comes up. And what we are telling everyone, what we're telling everyone about their this package is like we want you to fill it out. We want you to have the information about your rights, but we don't want you to. We're with the hope that you never use it. That's you know, like that's the goal at the end, and it's been very interesting because I know there's been this narrative around the country about like this conversation about many people from my community knowing the rights, and it's making it hard to have any arrests. And I want to give a shout out to the different organizations around the country and even some elected officials that are providing resources for Know Your Rights, because it's very, very important that we knew that before the beginning of this administration that would be like the number one thing that we needed to talk to people about. And there is a lot of fear. I will say there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of concern, but we also have a lot of hope. We are a resilient community, and we, even in these dark times, we're trying to center some joy and still build community in the work that we do, because without joy and without love, we can't do this work. It gets a little too dark. And so we always said, you know, in ISEC, like everything we do is like love and action. And it's beautiful, but also let me tell you, the love part sometimes like I even struggle with that because I'm like, is this too much or I'm too angry? But sometimes it's okay to take a step back. And for our allies, if you're interested in being an ally, there's so many opportunities in ISEC and other organizations in Northern Colorado that you can be part of this work. We just had last week a rapid response training, which is like if someone, you know, like an ally like gets trained to, if someone gets a call that, hey, like we saw ICE at Walmart, one of the allies that gets trained to go and verify this, if this information is correct. And if there's something going on, they also get trained to be like to record and how like to make to film what the interaction, to record everything that it's happening in case something illegal happens with immigration. We just had like I said, we just had that training last week, and we're going to continue to have those trainings. And it was so powerful because we had over 60 people.
Jesús,
Yes.
so at the end, I'm going to have you hold this till the end, but a way that people can connect with you to maybe have some of that training.
Yeah, but
Right.
yeah.
Because I'm going to move on to Caitlin. Do you have a quick one? Okay, thank you. Caitlin, there you are on my screen. Caitlin Wyrick is a native of Loveland, Colorado. She serves as the executive director of Heart and Soul in Loveland. Her mission is to create a welcoming and inclusive community. In addition to serving as the executive director, she also serves on the board of Loveland's Downtown Development Authority. Caitlin was an honoree at the League of Women Voters Equity Day event in 2023. She received recognition for her efforts to expand voting rights, work to empower women to reach their full potential, and to create an environment where gender doesn't limit opportunity. Hi, Caitlin.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm going to try to be as concise as I can because 10 minutes is quite the challenge, which thank you to the League for hosting this forum tonight as well. So it's important, I'd like to start off with a little background about me, that I'm seventh generation Lovelander. Prior to my family immigrating or moving to Loveland, we actually are indigenous to New Mexico. So before it was part of the United States, that was a part of Mexico. So those are my roots. And then my father, on my father's side, I am first generation. He immigrated to United States when he was a teenager, started a brand new life, and I admire his courage for doing that. And so I think a part of that is being an American, but also knowing that your parent had, like, as an immigrant. And part of that story is sharing, like what Jesús was talking about. Every story is different. And so they're sacred stories. The thing I would say is at any time that anyone in the immigrant community, or even I say BIPOC community and or LGBTQIA plus community shares something about their experience, that it's a sacred thing and they're being vulnerable with you. That takes courage and it's uncomfortable. And so I want to just acknowledge that we do that because we know that it can inspire change and it can bring us together. And so, but it isn't easy, and our stories are all different. So I want to reiterate that, like, growing up here in Northern Colorado, I obviously, English is my first language. I speak Spanglish, which is not helpful, really, in many spaces. But, you know, my father was really always hesitant to attend my school things, my basketball games or whatever it was, just because of trying to protect me. And as he would say, like, not to embarrass me, which never would have embarrassed me. But there's a part of kind of protecting your community and your children that comes along with being an immigrant parent. And I think even just a new American as well. Like, there's something about it that's sacred. And I like to refer to the communities as hidden communities because we survive through those hidden ways. And we help each other. So there's a network. And so that is something that I think is important to know when you're trying to help and be an ally. Secondly, I want to reiterate that the process to coming to the United States is broken and has discriminatory undertones. And so that is why you see so many people crossing, coming for refuge to find safety in the United States. And so I just want to acknowledge that. Secondly, since we know that part of the United States was once Mexico, you have generations of people whose families have been split by a border that split them. The border crossed them and not the other way around. And so I want to acknowledge that as well. So Heart and Soul originally started, our founders were Loveland LULAC. And so we really started that about 8 or 10 years ago, where we started hosting Know Your Rights events. And that was through a similar administration. Things became very hostile and unsafe. And we navigated. We also realized that there was an ally community that didn't know how to help. And we were told, how can I be part of LULAC? Like, I'm not a Latino. And we very quickly realized that an organization like Heart and Soul needed to be formed to bring in people of different identities and backgrounds and cultures and allies so that we could learn about one another and be allies for one another as we support each other. So here you have Heart and Soul. Heart and Soul is most known for our celebratory events. We believe through art and culture that we can educate one another. We learn how to celebrate one another, and we bring each other together. The more we know about one another, we see that we're all the same, right? But on the other side, we also do a lot of advocacy work. We serve on a variety of boards where we advocate for change within systems that we know were not always built to serve us. And so that's a part of who we are. Right now, we are starting to support, in Loveland, there aren't as many events going on with Know Your Rights. And so partnering with Sueño Latino And Isaac is another one. Like they've been a huge supporter. And I think even Fuerza Latina, the packets that they're being used, all of that information is kind of simmering across Northern Colorado. And Heart and Soul is grateful to be a part of that to support the work. We've hosted, we just did an ally training, an in-person one. So if you're interested in whether you're in Fort Collins or Loveland or another community, there are opportunities to come in, learn how to do the training, learn your rights. Right now, it's about just being prepared. And I think overall, just knowing your rights in general. What should you do if the police approach you? What should you do if an ICE agent were to approach you? And I think ideally for me, our roots with Heart and Soul is protecting and encouraging the next generation. That includes immigrant children and also children whose parents are immigrants, protecting them from harm. Any child that dies in a detention center is unacceptable and inhumane treatment. And in fact, anyone that should die in a detention center would be inhumane treatment. So protecting that and protecting our community is our top priority in the work that we're doing. What we're hearing is a lot of fear. There's safety concerns. I mean, children aren't sure if they go to school that their parents will be home. Your grandparents who've been here for generations, we don't know if they'll be here. There are so many people in our community that work in the businesses that we support that are immigrants. And even if there's paperwork to show that, there is a lot of fear about proving that. Think about if you had to carry your passport with you at all times. And that is really the reality that our immigrant community and the children and the families are facing, even if you know that you might be a resident or even a citizen, right? So the other part is that we're fighting, we're trying to, not fighting, sorry, we're looking at funding for emergency things for families, the resources and sharing all of those things with Isaac and all of the organizations that are even on the call tonight. But the other thing I want to say is that we have to be adaptable. Right now, there is something on the ballot to change the law so that police officers can assist ICE agents. If something like that were to happen, the story changes, our plan changes, and we have to be prepared and adaptable to make sure that we're following the law, we know the law, and that we help the communities that we serve. I have a couple little calls. I think I have a couple minutes. So the thing I would like to put out to the allies on the call tonight is that your citizenship is a privilege. I would like to challenge everyone to use it to protect families. If you see something, you should say something. If you see something, you should record it. If you can call it in or whatever you can do. Knowing your rights as a citizen is also important because you can stand up and say, hey, is that a judicial warrant? You can create barriers to protect families that maybe don't know all their rights. And so you are a huge part of that. I would also say that knowledge is power, and we have to use our power to help in whatever capacity that you have, whatever specialty and life journey you have, you can use that to help families. ICE relies on the community not knowing their rights. And to me, that's appalling and offensive. Preying on people who don't know their rights is just, in my opinion, a low blow. And so if we can be educated and we can educate others, we can certainly change the community. I'd also like to challenge everyone to think about supporting places or wherever they go, the places they support, wherever you shop, the banks that you bank at, any place that you do business with. Hold them accountable and ask what they're doing to protect their immigrant employees. Show up for the community. Show up for the community that you want to be allies for. Show up for the protests and advocate. Even if it feels like maybe, do I belong here? Ask. Show up in a way because, again, your citizenship and your representation will only add numbers and add a barrier of protection to the community that we know that we need to protect. Spend your dollars intentionally. The immigrant community, the BIPOC community, the LGBTQIA+ community, they all are a huge part of the local economy. And within all of those identities is a lot of intersectionality, and we make up a lot of the growth in our local economy. By being intentional, corporations will see where they have to support and shift. And when we invest with our money intentionally, we can hold all of the authorities accountable. And that's all I have.
You're right on the minute. Thank you. That was great.
Thank you.
Maria. Up next is Dr. Maria Gabriel. Maria is in her 27th year as a public educator in Northern Colorado. 21 of those years have included leading DEI in 2 different school districts. She worked as a PK through 12 Latina educator since 1997. Dr. Gabriel currently serves as the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for the Thompson School District. In 2022, she was named Multicultural Educator of the Year by the National Association for Multicultural Education. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate the League for putting this together and the opportunity to share a little bit. The request for me was to present a bit about let's see, it says perspective on the impact on students and parents. And as Cindy said, my position is within Thompson School District. So it's majority Loveland, Berthoud, but also a bit of Johnstown, a bit of Fort Collins, up to Drake. So we cover a lot of the community here and some of the more rural community. It's definitely, as other people have said, a very divided community in terms of political view and how that shows up impacting our students. I also wanted to, a couple things. Let me start by saying I am an immigrant to this country. I was born in South America. I grew up in Loveland, am a product of Thompson School District, graduated from Thompson Valley, and have really been living within a 50-mile radius of Loveland really all my life. As I went to college in Boulder, started there, and then have lived around this area in several different parts of the community, Northern Colorado, and worked in Northern Colorado. So, and raised 2 multiracial, multi-ethnic daughters in Thompson School District as well. And so I definitely, I want to say with that is that the title of this session is Before the Storm, Our Immigrant Community and How to Be an Ally. And I want to just start by saying we are in the storm. Our families are afraid to send their children to school. We have a family member who has been detained after dropping their child off at one of our schools. We have a young student who has told staff that they would rather die than be deported. And unfortunately, this is a storm we have known before. This one came faster and stronger and knows no end. And I believe because we have that President Trump is emboldened our community to embrace hatred and bigotry and to be openly discriminatory and towards people with disabilities, the LGBTQ community, immigrants of all types in the past, including posting and pushing for a Muslim ban, all of the things that happened against our Asian community, et cetera, that we now have a very emboldened underbelly of folks who have been writing Project 2025 and all the other things that have gone along with it for the past 4 years in preparation for this storm that has now hit us in the last 2 weeks. I was an assistant principal in 2016, and I remember the fear of an individual student who I did bus duty morning and afternoon. And so when I would be at the bus in the mornings, I remember explicitly a child who got off the bus was crying and said that this children on the bus were telling him that, when Trump got elected, that he and his family would be deported. And it was an, elementary school that I worked at. So here we are again, the storm again, stronger and faster with so much more support than it had the first round. So many of us have been a part of, remember the time when there was the raid at Swift in Greeley and how that impacted our schools. So to be here again, for me as a Latina educator and one of the only women of color, so I'm not thinking of white presenting, Latinas or Mexicanas or whoever might be in the administration building for Thompson School District, but being a woman of color who is presents as a Latina and can't, pass as something else. It's incredibly difficult. It has created a lot of PTSD for me, knowing that Trump has stated that, yes, we're going to, he's going to start with deporting immigrant community who has, been a part of violent crimes, but that's not where he's going to stop. So a lot of PTSD is existing for our school leaders, for our staff members, for our families, and for our students, because we have been here before. The anti-immigrant sentiment in the United States and in Loveland, Colorado, in Berthoud, Colorado, has been here for longer than that. In fact, as I recall putting on the Loveland Cinco de Mayo for many years in Loveland, and we had years, 15, 20 years ago, where we wouldn't have our Latino community show up because of fear of the anti-immigrant sentiment in Loveland. So I want to also just share that I think so many of our school leaders, district leaders are concerned right now also about the ways that our disenfranchised and dehumanized community members are going to be limited in their access to education, their educational opportunities, their supports. When we start thinking about, Trump's executive order to remove federal assistance from schools, that will impact our Title I grants, which means supports and services for students living in poverty. We think about this the intersectionality between communities, and so we know who that will end up impacting. Also, the impacts on our transgender students right now because of executive orders is devastating, and the concerns that we have for, is really it's about life or death. So I want to say also there was a question about, how can people be an ally? Somebody mentioned this, but I want to say again, record any interaction with police, record the police action and what they're doing. Please try to respect the privacy of immigrants or other community members so that their faces and their privacy doesn't go viral, so that you keep them safe. If you have a business or no other business owners, I encourage people to hire immigrants or people living in poverty in this community, because we're going to be in a space in which lots of continued homelessness is going to grow. I invite people to stay informed. Also to stand up and support, like have your own script, your own one-liner to address biased and prejudiced language you hear from your families, your family, your friends, and your work colleagues. Because do not be mistaken, this discrimination and this prejudice and the biased perspectives is living among us. Mm-hmm. It's not just out there in a scary costume. It's in our own families. It's in our own communities. It's amongst our work colleagues as well. I invite people to protest. I participated in 2 national protests last week. Invite you to call Congress. And most of all, what I want to reiterate, something that Caitlin said, that when inviting some of us to tell these stories, like Jesús story, Caitlin and myself, these are sacred stories. And so whenever you as an ally have the opportunity to engage with somebody, please let them share their story before you ask their story. And always believe immigrant individuals when they share your story without questioning or interrupting. or asking questions for your own purposes. But I think that's a thing we've missed. We've dehumanized people by not believing their stories and or by dismissing their stories. So those are oh, and also I think if in terms of spending your money, there's a lot of stuff online right now about which businesses have chosen to continue DEI initiatives and supports openly and explicitly. And I encourage people to spend their money in those businesses and not the ones that have already turned off all their support for DEI. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we'll try to find a way to get that list and maybe have it for the recording, Kathy.
You can try. Yeah, we should be able to.
Thank you. Up next, we have Claudia Menendez. I'd like to see her on the screen. There she is. Claudia serves as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the City of Fort Collins. She has worked internationally and locally for equality, diversity, and inclusion of underrepresented communities for 20 years. Before joining the city, Claudia served as the Family Engagement Specialist for Poudre School District, simultaneously taught Spanish literacy for 9 years. In 2021-22, Claudia was named Outstanding Bueno Educational Equality and Cultural Diversity Master Student. Claudia.
Buenas noches. My name is Claudia Maria Menendez. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for bringing us all together. It is a really wonderful outpouring of support to see so many people tune in and have open hearts to help the community. And most importantly, just to listen and to learn. So I'm originally from El Salvador. I grew up in Canada and now have lived here in Fort Collins for 15 years. We left El Salvador because we were fleeing violence, civil war, but also a very abusive relationship. My father was not a nice person at that moment. And, you know, I say that very plainly to you because I think that, you know, the sacred stories, right, that each immigrant holds, there's so much behind each of these stories. And we can't underestimate, right, the value of those stories and also just the reason why people are pushed to leave their countries. There is a myriad of reasons. And so if it's okay with you, I'm going to share a couple of slides because I think it's, I love actually how we've started because Jesús started and then Caitlin and then Maria. And I think my slides will encapsulate a little bit of these things as well. And I'm happy to share them afterwards. I'm a visual learner, and so I like to have something to also read. So let me just do this very quickly. One of our speakers might recognize himself in one of these photos. So just FYI. Let me see if I can get this on full screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I just want to share a little bit of my story before I get into the slides and keep me honest with the time as well. But, you know, when I arrived in Calgary, Alberta with my family, we arrived honestly because my mom caught wind that the Canadian consulate was offering amnesty or was helping folks from Nicaragua, Guatemala, and El Salvador who had fled civil wars to have a path to citizenship in Canada. And so having been in the United States first, undocumented, I mean, this was music to her ears. And so she was like, we've just got to try it, right? And so in March of '86, we landed in Calgary, Alberta, and were received by a group of volunteers who ran the reception house. And these group of allies to this day are still our friends. And so the work that you do, the potential that you have to really connect with community is really incredibly life-lasting, right? And so you're making differences in people's lives. So just know that however you choose to be an ally, whether it's a small, medium, or large effort, it all counts and it all makes a difference. So a couple of the things that already Dr. Gabriel started to mention is, really having, and so I'm going to take kind of a practical approach, right, to how to be an ally. And the same things that I'm saying to you are the same things that I also say to the staff here at the City of Fort Collins, to different partners and institutions that we work with and that we partner with. And, these slides I actually used just the other day to communicate with our city manager's office. So the way that I approach equity inclusion work is, we're in this every day and we're with each other every single day, right? Whether you're at work or whether you're out in the community. And so, so this is just my way of sharing all of this with you. So I think the active listening and learning is such a huge part of this, right? And Maria, said it so graciously, where you're listening and you're not interrupting and you're not asking too many questions. There's so many there's a myriad of reasons, right, why we're here. Some of them are, they're all over, right? The emotions are sort of all over. But I think if you can really do some active listening, you will learn so much from each individual story. And the community, whether we are Latino, whether we are Asian, LGBTQ, whatever the identity is, we are not a monolith community. And so it is important to take the time to listen to those individual stories. Along with that, right, if you listen to a story and you're just full of questions, which we usually are, then take the time to educate yourself afterwards. If you are in conversation, then yes, of course, right, read the room and you can, when you can insert some questions and have that dialogue. But I think really understanding, if you don't know anything about the Civil War in El Salvador, for instance, right, and you wanted to know more, then that's, I think, a great moment where you can learn to educate yourself. You can watch videos, you can read books, find podcasts, so that you're active as an ally, seeking the answers and seeking the information that you need. So we're not exhausting people who hold the stories to constantly be educating us. And so I think that's really a two-way street. Standing up against discrimination and supporting immigrant communities. And so a lot of the things also that Dr. Gabriel mentioned, I'm going to just hone in here on shopping at immigrant or culturally diverse businesses. Where you put your money has huge impact in this community, right? Where you choose to have dinner, whether it's at a food truck or you choose to go to a chain restaurant, that makes a big impact in the community. And I don't think any of us need to be reminded of the great contributions that all of the culturally diverse folks who live here in Fort Collins make to enrich this community. And so really, I think we can make conscious choices every single day in where we choose to spend our money. So that's one aspect, right, of being an ally, which might take a smaller effort, but a conscious and intentional effort. And so really understanding something simple as like learning to pronounce people's names properly, right? That can be challenging, and we don't have to be embarrassed about it, but we can just simply say, tell me how you pronounce your name, or how do you say your name? And so it's these small things that show respect to others. And, you strike up a conversation, right? If you don't speak the language of the person that you're hoping to interact with, my goodness, our phones are incredible machines. Google Translate is on there. You can have, different options of you just talking into the phone and it immediately translates into a whole bunch of different, languages. So let's use the tools that we have to help us connect with folks that we may not normally connect with. Learning basic phrases in other languages as well. Again, this comes along with, learning yourself. So I think lots of different ways. And also, I think about the different ways that you can spend your time, right? The library has different language exchange programs, obviously Fuerza Latina, Isaac, Poder, Heart and Soul, and, several other folks as well, Alianza NORCO, all have different ways that you can be spending time donating, or whether it's, making photocopies of the packets, helping set up for different events. And so there's lots of ways that we can intentionally give time even if we don't necessarily speak the language and can't be there hands-on helping folks fill out packets, for instance. And I think another one that, you know, I would like to say, so in this picture here that you see, this was the Latino and Hispanic Heritage Month event at the Gardens on Spring Creek this past October. And so there was a vendor's market. And so just attending cultural events, right? That is one way that we can really contribute and show respect and be learning and be in community with each other. Often I've gotten the question from folks where they say, you know, Claudia, is this event for people who are not Latino as well? And so I appreciate that honesty from folks. And I think that it also illuminates that we're in a time and space where we talk about identities so much that sometimes it gets a little bit confusing and we question whether we belong within, you know, in an event that's for a particular culture. And the answer is yes, right? And sometimes there will be things that maybe are more of a private setting, but anything that the city is doing, anything that a lot of these nonprofits are doing, it's for the community. And there's no better place to connect than at these sort of cultural events where we're learning from each other. And I'm sure Caitlin can really attest to that as well, right? That's how we connect, over food, over different cultural products, and just to be out, you know, in nature together in that way. And then, you know, as you can see Jesus's expression here, right? Like cultural humility, please, right? I think that it's so incredibly important that as you educate yourself, as you have conversations, as you find ways to invest your time in helping connecting with the community, is, you know, it's okay that you don't have the answers and that we recognize that not everybody has the answers, right? We're all learning as we go along. We know that we're in a really, I mean, these are trying times, right? For everyone involved and for different reasons for each of us. And so really just being active learners in all of this, and making sure that, you know, you're not bringing in information that isn't accurate into situations and conversations, especially when you're talking to other allies, and informing each other. So really pausing and asking, right, you know, do I have that information right? You know, let me make sure that I do. Who do I need to connect with so that we're informing ourselves in the best way, but also really respecting all of the cultural stories and the diversity that we're interacting with. And then amplifying the immigrant voices, right? And so again, encouraging folks to go and have dinner at a food truck or attend cultural events. And so I think that as allies, one of the most important things that you can do is inform others and encourage others to be supportive, right? And so through your own actions. And so if you're going to come to one of the events, bring somebody with you, right? Let's meet there so that they can also be in community with the different folks that we're talking about. And then lastly, I think there's two sections here. So political engagement and then obviously advocacy, right? All of the things that you're doing right now, obviously this is part of political engagement. It's part of being active in understanding what human rights are, what know your rights are, what our state rights or laws are, and how that's all of those implications. And of course, Kim is going to explain all of that here afterwards. But it's all of these things kind of mixed together that really are the ingredients to being a good ally. And so I encourage you to to continue to stay active and to stay connected, to stay curious, and to just find the ways to really connect with community in a variety of ways. And I bet my time is up.
Thank you, Claudia, very much. And some of the activity going on in the chat room will definitely be addressed at the end. But I'm going to introduce Kimberly now, Kimberly Baker Medina. Kim is an immigration attorney who has been in private practice in Fort Collins since 2003. She specializes in deportation defense, family-based immigration, asylum, immigrant children, and immigrant victims of crime. She is a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association and the National Immigrant Lawyers Guild. Kim is co-founder and former board member of the nonprofit Fuerza Latina and co-founder and advisory board member of the nonprofit HODAR, which was formed in 2024. She is the recipient of the American Immigration Lawyers Association Colorado 2013 Pro Bono Service Award. Kimberly?
Thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you. And also, I just want to thank all of the speakers that spoke before me, and thank you for sharing. And that's appreciated. And thanks for everyone for being here. So there's so much to talk about. We have 10 minutes. I'm going to do a timer. Okay, so we have 10 minutes and we won't cover everything, but we have questions and answers. But let's maybe start with this. Like, let's start with kind of where we are and how we got here. And I think it's important to look at kind of where we are and how we got where. And one of the reasons that we are where we are, and we're in a dark place. Let's not kid ourselves. We are in a very, very dark place. And as Maria said, the storm is here. And one of the reasons that we are in this bad place is because we have not been good allies. We let this happen. We let a national election happen where none of the candidates said anything good about immigrants in this country. And we let over 20 years go by without any meaningful immigration reform. We let this happen, people. We let a national election happen where immigrants were demonized, were dehumanized, as Jesús said, and as Caitlin said, they were cut out of being American. So we let this happen. And where are we? We have no surprises when we look around where we are. All we need to do is look at Project 2025. They laid it out for us. They told us exactly what they were going to do, and now they're going to do it. So there's no surprises here, people. This is about scapegoating. It's about attacking the most vulnerable. It's about racism. It's about racism. It's about racism, and it's about hate. And we're in a bad spot. So that's where we're at, right? And I think now that we're here, now that we're in this incredibly important time in our lives, we have to be talking about how we're going to respond to it. And we have to be talking about how we're going to move on and how we're going to get out, right? And we can talk about kind of what's happening. I think people have talked about it. And if people are curious as to like what's happening with immigrants and immigration, look at Project 2025. You can look at some of the executive orders that have already happened and see what's going on. And I think here's one thing that I do want you to do though. When you look at an executive order, don't just look at what it does. Look at the language. Look at what it says, because the language in these executive orders is vile and hateful and foul. These executive orders talk about members of our community in a completely unacceptable way. And we're letting this happen. We're letting these become a part of our national record. So do it. Flip through them. We on Poder, we actually have a link where you can keep up to date on kind of the executive orders. And you can read some of them. And again, the content is bad, but the language is worse. Okay, so that's where we are. And then, you know, how are people responding? I think it's really encouraging to see the ways that some of the local groups are responding. You know, Isaac has been doing great things, and Fuerza Latina has been doing wonderful things in the community. Heart and Soul is doing good stuff. We started a new organization, Poder. I'll just kind of tell you, some of the things that we're doing. Poder is to complement things that are already going on in the community. So we have kind of a three-part organization. One part is providing pro bono legal services. So we are training and mentoring and supervising attorneys who will take at no charge the immigration cases of people who are detained in Weld and Larimer counties. Okay, so that's one thing that we're doing. We are also training attorneys to help juvenile youth with specific court orders that these immigrant youth need. We have a group of estate planning attorneys who are going to be meeting with people and helping them plan those those orders that Jesús was talking about, so that people can make plans for their children and for their property. Our legal defense is called community defenders. The idea between community defenders is that it's what's called participatory defense. I don't know if any of you've heard of it, participatory defense, look into it. It's a model that's most commonly used in the criminal justice system, but it works very well in the immigration justice system. And so the idea is that it's not just one attorney and one client, but it's the community, it's the family that's preparing in the defense and that's aiding in the defense. And so it's a way of building community and doing community organizing at the same time that we're defending people. So that's a part of the project. In addition, we're engaged in resistance work. Our idea at Poder is that we can't just defend people, but we also have to try to make change. We have to get out of this very dark place we're at. And so we're engaged in community resistance. We have a lot of different committees that are working on ways that we can make our community better and safer for people. We're also engaged in a lot of know your rights work. We're developing a toolkit and doing kind of train the trainer, know your rights, kitchen table and know your rights. It doesn't have to be an attorney that gives that presentation. Anybody can do it, and we can do it, with 3 friends, right? And so the know your rights piece is a big part of it. And then the sharing your stories piece is another piece of the organization. So that's one thing that's going on. But some of the responses have not been so good. Some of it's understandable. Of course, there's a lot of fear, but not only is there fear among people who are being targeted, but sometimes as allies, we even kind of promote that fear, but fear doesn't protect us. Knowledge protects us, strength protects us, fear doesn't protect us. So our motto in Poder is that we are building power, not panic, okay? Construyendo poder, no pánico. Panic doesn't help us, power does. So the more knowledge we get to people, the more power we get to give people, the more information we get to people, the better they can defend themselves. So that's part of it. And we're also seeing that, I'm glad actually that Caitlin brought up using your privilege. And I think that, not only do we have to be able to use our privilege, we also have to be ready right now to lose our privilege. And we're not yet seeing that. Okay, and so we're at a time where, as allies, we need to be willing to step up and take a risk and take a chance. And instead, what we're seeing, locally or nationally, whatever, is a lot of kneeling and bowing and kissing the ring. And some of that is protecting our privilege, and some of that is our fear, but none of it is helpful. And there's a lot of excuses for this. Well, there's backlash. Well, there's this. The backlash is here, folks. The backlash is here. Read Project 2025. Okay, so don't be afraid of backlash. And what we need to be doing as allies, as individuals, as institutions, is we need to be getting out there. We need to be bold. We need to be radical. We need to not be afraid of backlash. We need to not be fearful. And we need to challenge this. We can't let this continue. Okay. So I would encourage you to get involved with some of the organizations that you've heard about, to do things on an individual level, like you heard Claudia talking about, to challenge individually when racism, when you see it, when you hear it, when you observe it, recognize it in yourselves and others and challenge it, but also be willing to challenge and risk some of those relationships and challenge some of those institutions, right? And tell them, be bold. We need them to be taking a stand. We need all of our institutions, our governments, our schools, our churches, our leaderships, our organizations. We need all of us to be taking a stand and saying that we do protect immigrants. And so rather than being fearful that, oh my gosh, my organization is a sanctuary thing, this is going to cause me backlash, we need to stand up and say, we're a sanctuary, whatever that is, whether it's a community group or a school, an institution, or an organization, we're a sanctuary, whatever, and we're willing to fight for that. We'll take you to court if you try to cut our funds, right? So we need to be willing to take those risks. So I would really encourage you all to think about that. If you're thinking about being allies, like being willing to risk your relationships, being willing to risk your privilege, being willing to risk your funding, being willing to do whatever it is. Because quite honestly, we as a nation have thrown people under the bus, and it's completely unacceptable. And we're all responsible for that, right? So how do we get out of it? How do we move forward? I want to share with you two quotes that help me. Well, I want to share three quotes. One of them is our quote at Poder, which is building power, not panic. Really important when we're talking about this. People are very, very scared, and they're rightfully and justfully scared. But we need to build power, not panic, okay? Panic is what this administration wants. That's one of them. Another quote that I think is a good one is a Joan Baez quote, and it is that action is the antidote to despair. And the last one that I think that we need to remember is from Martin Luther King, and that is that a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. So we need to stand up, we need to face this administration, we need to be tall, we need to be brave, we need to be willing to risk, and we need to make sure that we get out of this and that this doesn't happen again. And that's my advice to you as allies. That's my 10 minutes.
Yay. Fantastic. I think at this point, I turn it over to our chat room monitors. And Beth, I see your hands up, so I'll let you start.
Actually, my hand wasn't up. I was clapping to,
Sorry.
to Kim's presentation.
Yeah.
One thing I heard from one of the allies is bring it on. So I just love what you're saying. Okay, actually, Jane was going to go first, I believe. So, Jane, I'll let you begin with the questions.
What a powerful presentation this has been. We've already learned so much. I would encourage you to look in the chat. There are a lot of links to organizations and things that have been mentioned already. And I believe the chat is also part of the recording too, isn't it, Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be posted with the recording.
Right.
So there's a lot of information that is not in the form of a question for you to check into. The
Jane,
first,
Jane, just for one moment, I just want to make sure. Jesus, are you back in?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm back.
he's back.
Yep.
The first question goes along with the notion of taking a risk, but it's asking, is the federal government restricting the ability of volunteers to inform individuals of their rights as immigrants? And where can we go to find out what the current rights are? Kim, this might fall in your.
Well, I think Jesus already mentioned that they're, doing Know the Right stuff. We're doing Know Your Rights things, but, constitutional rights are pretty basic. Like, we should all know them. And so you can find there's a ton of information online. As to the question as to whether the federal government is restricting what we can say, no. And if they do try to restrict what we say, we don't let them, right? So, but of course, they're going to try to restrict it, but I don't know if anyone else has information about Know Your Rights. We have a lot of stuff on the website of Poder. You can always go there. We've got links to a lot of stuff, but there are a lot of great organizations out there. ILRC has a lot of immigration stuff. NILC has a lot of good immigration stuff. So there's a lot of information out there. And then locally, there's several organizations that are giving a lot of the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, and Poder is doing this stuff, and Isaac is doing this stuff, and Fuerza Latina. So.
You mentioned a toolkit also. Is that coming together in a place where it can be accessed?
So we're working on a toolkit in Poder that's going to be one that's working with immigrants, learning the rights and sharing the rights with others, but anybody could use the toolkit. So sure, anybody could use it. So it's combining mental health resources and Know Your Rights kind of resources. Yeah. But designed for that kind of kitchen table stuff.
Thank you. Beth?
Yeah, there was a question about the training by Isaac and Jesus. I think I know the answer to that because I was involved in some of the training for rapid response. The question was whether this is something different than what's being offered by Colorado Rapid Response Network, or whether it's in partnership. And I believe it is in partnership, correct?
It is in partnership. Yeah, I think we are like in constant communication with them, with Corn. When we have seen like any, because over the last few weeks we have seen some like like some of our community members have reached out to us and saying like, hey, like there's this happening at Walmart or a mobile home park, something that happened in Loveland. So we are in contact with them. And something that we're doing right now, like I was mentioning before, like just for a bit, that we train some of our allies to be some of those responders, because that really that's very important, especially because there's so much panic that there's some like I am part, and many of us in this chat that are part of this like community WhatsApps where there's it's mostly in Spanish, and like there's resources and things like that, and there's constant, hey, like we think there's ice at this small home park, there's something happening somewhere. So we're trying to figure out how not to like to get like because people are scared. So we want to make sure that we have like resources or people that can help us like deal with that, and like say like send someone to Walmart or something, and then they reach out to us like, hey, there was nothing or we didn't see anything, and then we let that community know. And this takes a lot of work, especially like organizing and coordinating. But we're just trying to figure out ways to make sure that our community feels like if they see something and we send someone that doesn't have a risk like myself, like so that's something that we're doing. And also we are planning to do some like train the trainers when it comes to know your right packets, and just like what are your rights. So like if people that work, in a school, or they're just our community leaders, or they just want to learn how to like talk to people about their rights, we are planning to do that too, even with like some businesses. And so we're like, that's gonna come up. I don't know when that it's happening, but that's another resource that we have to offer.
I just want to add that all of the meetings, the reason why I talked about hidden communities is that these meetings about know your rights are private. You will not see them posted on social media for the protection of the people that are attending. And so that's where there's this network kind of under the river, the current, I might say, of sharing that information. But what will be posted are a lot of ally trainings and things like that. So I would encourage you to go and like our Facebooks or our subscribe to our newsletters, because those are where those things will be posted. Again, it's not that those things aren't happening, but this information and the people in attendance, it's so sensitive that we have to create layers, like I said, to protect the work. And so it is happening, but you will not see it posted publicly for obvious reasons. But the other things, and once you get involved, there will also be groups of like how you can help with learning how to, if you're interested in like watching for rapid response or being there, there's some trainings that will happen. It just starts with showing up.
And oh, oops. I was just gonna say that, I mean, that's, yeah, I think there are different ways that people are doing the know your rights stuff. So, I think some people are choosing to do it very privately, and other people are choosing to do things a lot more publicly. So I think that there's a mixture kind of events in that way, that some people are also doing those things very publicly. So, yeah.
We have some student help questions. So I'm thinking, Maria, this will probably go to you. Two questions, actually. One is from a middle school teacher who would like to know some tips or something that she could pass along to her middle schoolers about how they can help other students. And along with that, we mentioned that there's the fear that your family's going to be gone and taken while you are at school. How can we help the students who come home to families that have been taken?
I'm trying to unmute Maria, Dr. I'm not finding you. Hold on. Let's see.
Kathy, if you can't, did you find it?
No, did you?
Well, I can find her, but it won't let me unmute because I think you're the main man. So
I am. Where is it? Okay.
if you, in that little box, if you just type Maria,
Yeah.
it'll let you search.
I didn't think of that. Okay, hold on.
Mhm.
Patients be-
While they're looking, you might look at the chat to see some of the links and connections and contact information that's in there. Scroll through it.
And we will be compiling something too. Why is it not coming up? I'm not getting it coming up, even when I do a search. I apologize.
Maybe I could just go to another question in the meantime. Is that okay?
That's a good idea.
I think maybe this would go to Kim, although maybe it could actually go to Jesus too, because I know you have been in the country having to reapply for your status as now I'm sorry, I'm getting cloudy here. Your status as a dreamer, but you have to apply for what is that again? You applied for it.
For
Yeah.
DACA. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for DACA. Thank you. And one of the questions is, how do we answer the question that many Americans pose as to why folks who entered the country without formal authorization never applied for citizenship? We need talking points on this issue.
You want me
In
to
this
do that
regard-
one, Jesus, or you want to do it? There's not a path.
Yeah.
I was gonna,
Yeah.
Okay, Kim, I
I
was
mean, you
gonna
can
say
answer
that.
that.
Yeah.
You can answer that
Right.
too. Because we have a completely dysfunctional, broken system. And this is another way that we have failed as a nation. The
Right.
last
So
major
that's-
immigration reform was in 1996, and it was horrible. It was all punitive. There is no way for people to get status. If people could, they would. And the only lines we have are 25 years long. So we could do a whole session on this. But there's literally, oh, good, and Maria's unmuted, so she can answer this. But yeah, there's just, I mean, you know, Jesus, you can answer that too. But nobody is here without status because they want to be here without status.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great, I mean, I love your answer because I think that's the kind of thing we need to tell people then. You know, that's what we're looking for, you know, what to tell people that ask those kind of questions. Jesus, please, you know, add in what you think on that also.
I mean, yeah, I think like it's one of those things, you know, I came to the States when I was 13. I was just like an innocent little teenager that had no idea how much like this will impact my life. And that was over 20 years ago. And there's no path for me. Like, you know, like even like, because I remember like when I like through the years, you know, like even before DACA, I will question like, what can I do to become a citizen or my path to citizenship? And it was impossible. And obviously there are certain ways like, you know, if I meet someone and I get married and they happen to be a citizen, but you know, like, there's not really a real way for me to just like make a transition from DACA to get a green card or a path to citizenship. And it's very frustrating, especially when I think my mom came to the States when she was 38. I'll be 38 in 4 years. Obviously, my path was easier because of DACA, but that has restrictions. I call having DACA like a bad gym membership that you just keep paying for it and like you kind of use. And even though I'm thankful that I have it, it's very restrictive. I can't leave the country so easily. I can't apply for certain jobs. You know, I always wanted to work, not anymore because now things are crazy, but like I wanted to be a staffer for an elected official. I wanted to work in federal government. I can't do that. So it's very limiting. So it's frustrating, especially the older you get, the more you're like, okay, like, you know, like I'm going into this like different stage of my life and I'm still dealing with this. And it's very, very it's very upsetting. Like I'm glad what I have and I'm thankful that I get the opportunity to be able to work, but I'm always at that risk. Is like, can they take DACA away? They can take DACA away from me any minute. And then what do I do? My life will completely change and I will have to figure something out, which I will. I'm a resilient person, but it's very frustrating. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we go back to Maria and about the students and students helping students and
Sure, thank you. I was going through the chat to see if I could find those specific questions. So I'm going to start with Andy's, when he says, if you want to look in the chat, it's at 7:42. Andy asks about mentioning the fear of students getting dropped off of school and coming home to families that have been taken. Are there things we can do now to prepare to help students that end up in that situation? As I know, Hooters School District has done a lot of things to set up protocols and plans for how to support students and what the protocols are, and they made statements and things much sooner than Thompson has. But Thompson also has now a protocol, so teachers, staff members in Thompson School District, for example, their first call is to our security dispatch, and then that goes to myself, or well, actually goes to myself plus 2 other directors, and then whoever responds to that becomes the lead on support and engagement, and we have a whole protocol for that. So as a teacher, if I'm not sure if Andy's a teacher but I would definitely say connect with your school district to find out what those processes and protocols are. I also know that CSU and doing a partnership with a program right now with them for high school students and families right now, they have a just like ironed out a really strong protocol there, and they actually have an immigration lawyer who's part of CSU. So they have kind of the, contact their, I can't think of the names of them, sorry. But then they will actually send their immigration attorney on site to make sure that they have someone available to kind of stand between ICE and family or student if needed. So check with wherever the students are going to school and ask what those protocols are so you can be informed and support. Then I think the other one, I saw it earlier, but now I can't find it, is the one somebody was asking about how to help middle school students around support for immigrant students. Is that right?
Yeah, just you're sitting at the lunch table or whatever and talking about this. How can the students help the fellow students?
Yeah. So as a parent, what I would invite you to do is to talk to your child's classroom teacher and find out what are the school-wide expectations, what are the things that have been stated in terms of behavioral expectations. Often that's known as the Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, PBIS. Ask what are those behavioral expectations for students in the school? Are there different classroom agreements? That's the work we've been doing in Thompson School District. But to align those, I've been working with them to ensure that every school has something around honoring diversity and or inclusion in every school, that's part of their positive behavior intervention support acronym. So it'd be like hanging on the wall, like one of our high schools has honor diversity as one of their pieces of their acronym, so that then the classroom teacher can share with a parent or guardian or GLE, like what are those stated expectations so that they can support them in creating just like a statement to say something like, those aren't kind words. And in our classroom, we agree to use kind words so that nobody's feeling left out or that nobody's feelings are hurt or whatever it is that they're agreeing to already in their classroom. So that, that gives them a little just support, and they're also upholding classroom agreements, for example. It's just really about giving them script and giving them practice. I think depending on that relationship at home, for me, it's been about raising children who are social justice advocates from the time they were very, very small, so that they have grown up with that lens and language. So we as families and parents have that opportunity to model an appreciation for diversity, not just by sending our children to a diverse school, but to have books and texts and toys and magazines and things around our home. Things that hang on our walls, all the things that we have diversity showing up in our own home, including people who are authentically connected to us and friends, not just like token minority friends that we want to invite over. But so that's, I think, in terms of my work as a parent raising children to be social justice advocates in this, I've been in Berthoud for 20 years, living in Berthoud for 20 years. So highly conservative. My neighbors have, you know, all the flags hanging in in their garages, in their outside of their homes, etc. So those are things I always think as families, we have a responsibility to be engaging those conversations at home. Hopefully that helps.
If I may just kind of add something to that, I think that that another thing that we can all do is encourage our institutions to also stand up for those kids. I mean, there is bullying going on. I don't know about Thompson, but I know where my kids went to school, in Trump 1 and now in Trump 2, there's bullying going on from kindergarten through 12th grade. And we just had a meeting last week. It was an open meeting with the superintendent schools, and there were a lot of families of color, immigrant and otherwise, expressing to the superintendent that they don't feel seen and they don't feel heard and they don't feel that the school has their back. And so what people in that meeting were saying is they want the district to have a stated policy saying that they support immigrant families and LGBTQ students and students of color and all of these kinds of things. So I think that's something else that we could do in addition to the individual, encouraging individual children not to be bullies, is encourage our institutions, again, to be bold, right? Risk it, take a risk, and stand up and stand up for people who are being bullied and in our schools. So, yeah.
There's a question about the media has said that a significant proportion of the legal documented Latino population supported Trump and his immigration policies. Have you found that to be true at all? And this person says, I've been confused and uncomfortable about this as I interact with people. There was another question about that also. Do you find that there's any anti-immigrant sentiment among those who came here legally? Anyone want to comment to that?
I'd love to.
Yes, Maria.
Kick it off in terms of, I know other people have more to say, and but yeah, I think it was around 58% of the Latino population voted for Trump. My personal stance on that is that Harris Wall's campaign, you know, while they got almost 100% of the Black vote, is they forgot about Latinos, which is very true in the US. We have this black-white binary, and brown folks have been not a part of the conversation around racism for a very long time. And so I think there was a total miss on connecting and communicating with the Latino communities about what was true in things like Project 2025 and otherwise. And I just think that for people who are allies and learning and understanding more about what's true for the Latino community, as somebody said earlier, we're not a monolith. I think Claudia said that. We're not a monolith, and there are differences for people along, you know, issues around colorism. So the lighter skinned Latinos can pass as white and darker skinned Latinos cannot. And so there is often, I mean, in this world, it's much better to be white than to be dark skinned. And so we have a lot of Latinos within the community for many generations who have chosen, or their parents have chosen for them, that assimilation is a better route to become successful in the US. So have told them, like, don't speak Spanish. I'm not teaching you Spanish because I want you to fit in, all those things. And for many people, it's definitely an advantage. I think somebody said that. It's an advantage to be white skinned, light skinned. People don't choose to, if they had a choice, nobody's saying, yes, I want to be darker skinned. Because people know what that means in the US, right? Historically and currently. So that, a lot of Latinos have been kind of sold a story about assimilation and have bought into that because it's a protector.
I think that brings us to our time, Kathy. I don't know if you can can talk a little bit about some of the lists of things that you're going to be accumulating. I know partnerships and businesses that are supportive, and is that some of the things that we're going to do?
I'm going to try to get as much of this together. I will send a list out to everybody who registered for the meeting tonight, for the presentation tonight, so everybody will get that. And I'll try to do my best with that. We'll also be posting this video, the recording of this meeting, on the League of Women Voters of Larimer County's website. Somewhere in the chat I put that, but you can find that. Probably give me a couple of days to get it up. Sometimes it goes quickly and sometimes it doesn't. So, but that'll be in our events and news drop-down menu on the main page of our League of Women Voters of Colorado website. Do you want to say something, Jared?
No.
Nope, I thought you. Okay. Anyway, this was just a fabulous hour and a half that we've had with all of you. We've learned, I know I learned so much, and I'm sure everybody who was listening got some real gems this evening, and we appreciate it. I'm going to pass this over to Jerry for a minute.
I just want to, I guess, sum it up by thanking everybody for attending. I want to
Were you moved?
what?
I said, were you moved?
Yeah.
I think we all were.
We want to thank everybody who helped put this together. We want to thank the presenters who were so open to us. We want to thank everybody who shared the fact that this presentation was happening at their churches and their, throughout their networks, because that's where so many people, I mean, we were surprised as the numbers kept growing of people who had registered for this. We are grateful. We are grateful. And I think we have individual choices of paths we can take to help, to do something, and I agree, Kim, with what you said, that you have to do something because it takes us out of what our melees about what's happening. So we appreciate that.